Talks Live, which brings exciting happenings, resources, and talent from your UW flagship campus to the people of Wisconsin and beyond. I'm Brandon Springer, originally from Waterloo, Wisconsin, and I'm a second year in LNS studying political science. I was asked to provide a little bit of my Upham Woods story first, so I'm going to talk about my journey starting as a 4-H summer camper, and that's where I first fell in love with camp and learning about nature. There's only certain ages that you can go to summer camp, and when I aged out of that, I was like, I'm not done here, so I decided to come back as a counselor so that I could help the next group of campers provide or get the same experience as I did. And then you can still age out of being a counselor. So as soon as I did that, I was like, I'm still not done here. And I came back as a naturalist and was excited to provide that educational experience for those campers as they came through. And that's where I currently am. And can't wait to see what my future camp experiences will be like. I am excited to be introducing Justin Hoffman, Assistant Professor and Director of Upham Woods for Extension, where he supports the delivery of a wide range of science education topics to K-12 students, graduate students, and in-service teachers. Today, Justin will be talking about the 80th anniversary of Upham Woods, an amazing 317-acre outdoor learning lab located in the Wisconsin Dells, which was gifted to the university from Caroline Upham Hughes and Elizabeth Upham Davis. Over the decades, much has changed at Upham, but the mission has remained to provide joyful opportunities to explore and wonder through dynamic experiential learning. Whether virtual or in person, this outdoor laboratory is a home for all citizens of our state. Justin holds a PhD in sustainability education and natural resources and a Master of Science in Education from Washington State University and a Bachelor of Science in Cognitive Science from Indiana University. Please welcome Justin Hoffman.
Thanks a lot, Brandon, and thanks for being on our team during COVID here and as we ramp up coming out of that era. So I really appreciate your time and the introduction, and appreciate the time come to talk about Upham Woods here at Badger Talks. I have a handful of fun slides about history for Upham and some of the teaching philosophy that we have here, and some of the next steps, ways you can get engaged in the future with Upham Woods. So thanks to everybody watching, and I'll get started here. I'm reporting live from the Eilenfeld Library, which is named after a prominent educator and family in Milwaukee, and that's in the Peters Nature Center, which is on the main campus of Upham Woods Outdoor Learning Center. To start out with, though, I want to acknowledge not just these buildings and rooms, but the land that we're on. And the University of Wisconsin-Madison occupies ancestral Ho-Chunk land, a place their nation has called Dejo since time immemorial. In an 1832 treaty, the Ho-Chunk were forced to cede this territory. Decades of ethnic cleansing followed when both the federal and state government repeatedly but unsuccessfully sought to forcibly remove the Ho-Chunk from Wisconsin. This history of colonization informs our shared future of collaboration and innovation. Today, UW-Madison respects the inherent sovereignty of the Ho-Chunk Nation, along with the 11 other First Nations of Wisconsin. And that's particularly poignant here at Upham Woods too. We're on ancestral Ho-Chunk land as well. Right outside my window here is the Wisconsin River, and there's Ho-Chunk in our community all around us. So as I was reflecting on this talk and our opportunity to share these stories, Upham Woods really is a version of the Wisconsin idea outdoors. We bring a lot of opportunities for science education and leadership and team building and natural history alive through in-person experiences on the land. And a lot of those content areas are topics that researchers at the university or other scholars help us advance on the property. So we, in many ways, embody that spirit of the Wisconsin idea right here on the Wisconsin River, and we specialize in the outdoor variety of it. And if you're not familiar, yeah, the if you haven't been to Upham Woods before, don't know where it is specifically, you can see on the left this red dot. We're just about north of Madison, and in the on the map on the right, you can see a closer inset of this property, which is just fascinating. The Wisconsin River comes in from the north, which is the top of the map, and it forks and flows around Black Hawk Island, and then comes back together and goes into the Dells. Pretty amazing place. Absolutely one of the most unique places I've ever worked in my career. And to get over to that island, this is some of that history I mentioned. These are some photos that were shared with me from Joshua Gady from Monroe County. This is how folks get to the island. And this photo is from the 1960s, and it's still how we do it today. We take these little barges across and we start our hikes. And that wasn't always an island, though. Here's some old maps. These are from the 1890s. And you can see in the center of each of these maps, there's a blob that was, as it was surveyed, the cartography shows here what this was like before the river was dammed and it flooded out enough of that channel to become an island. So it wasn't always an island, and who knows what it'll be in the future. But it's recently an island as of 1909. And here's another example of the same thing. On the left, you can see cartography showing it not as an island, but just as a piece of land there on the shores of the Wisconsin River. And the piece on the right, you can see, is cartography that was done by Charles Lapham, who is the son of Increase Lapham. And Increase Lapham was one of the first naturalists of the state. They were both surveyors, and these are old surveys, kind of show how they came down that river corridor and evaluated many things in that era in the 1800s. So, but fast forwarding from that spot to the 1940s, this land was donated to the university and accepted by the Board of Regents from Elizabeth and Caroline Upham. And they stated back then, 80 years ago, that this was to be an outdoor laboratory for youth, such as 4-H clubs and other folks cooperating with the university for the advancement of conservation, agriculture, and rural culture. I think that's pretty neat. And it's really what we still do today. We do this outdoor laboratory really well, and we're working a lot in different ways of interpreting what rural culture is, and certainly advancing conservation and understanding of agriculture. The first superintendent was a man named Ranger Mack. That was his radio name. He was originally from the Dells, and then he later became a radio host on public radio, Wisconsin Public Radio. And he had a special radio program that was about the outdoors and science. It was called A Field with Ranger Mack. And schools all over, and you can see this photo on the left from the Wisconsin Archives, University of Wisconsin Archives. Folks would listen to the radio in the 30s and 40s and listen to his stories and lessons about what's going on in nature in that season or at that time of the year. And I'm really inspired by that. One, because of course it's a cool story, but and it's about our history, but also that at the time, using the radio was just the technology of the day to teach about an exciting thing, hopefully to get more people outdoors. We're doing the same stuff today. We're just using the internet. We're doing virtual programming, but in a lot of conceptual ways, it's exactly what we've been doing for 80 years. And our predecessors were pioneering. He had a famous quote, which I think is pretty inspiring, and I think is really inclusive. He said, Ranger Mack said, "If you didn't take a walk yesterday, you missed out on many things that may not come again." And what he's really emphasizing there, in my opinion, is a sense of wonder and a sense of looking around. And he's not saying you got to go to Upham Woods to look around. He's not saying only people in a certain place can do it. I see this as a really inclusive invitation. Anywhere you are in the world, any age you are, of any ability or walk of life, you can take notice of what's going on and and make conclusions and have a richer life for it. And we kind of try to promote that here. Also, other famous, touchstones along the era. Uh, Ranger Mack was a contemporary of Aldo Leopold. These photos are from the Aldo Leopold archive, and they're of Upham Woods of Black Hawk Island. And there's just a strong connection there to the land ethic and the notions around the state in that time that Upham Woods was founded, about conserving the land and the importance of it, and how we're part of a bigger community. And I think that's a really important touchstone too. And of course, Aldo Leopold's shack is just a handful of miles downriver from here. So we're right up in the up the corridor from there. This is a letter from Aldo Leopold out of the archives that went to the Upham family, thanking them for their donation and of the land, and appreciating the specialness of what this is. And he mentions the arboretum in this letter, and also just how important it is to get outside in these specific areas. Leopold was one person in the neighborhood, and another was August Derleth. August Derleth was again a really prolific writer in that era. He wrote quite a wide a range of things, from fiction to nonfiction, and in one specific case wrote this book called The Ghost of Black Hawk Island, which is pretty neat. And we're in the process of retracing the steps in that book and making a geocache that can go along with the story. This story came out in 1961, I believe, and it's again, there's just a rich history here of a lot of different folks that care about being outdoors and being on the land and getting more people out like that. And I've just enjoyed, since I started this position, learning all these different nooks and crannies of this story. Another nook and cranny of the story, of course, is the scientific research that happens here. We have a lot of different scientific research happening here. We have a rich history of that. In particular, I'm highlighting here a couple of really famous research papers. This is Black Hawk Island, which you see in the map on the right, was the site of NASA research for hyperspectral imagery. And this is one of the richest places, if not the richest place on Earth, for that information and that method of collecting information, which is related to many things in ecology and in climate science. So that's in the backdrop of what we're doing also. But we have about 11 or 12,000 folks a year we impact, and they are taking part in a version of inquiry-based science education. And that the roots of that also go back to the 1940s and 50s. The particular example I'd like to point to there is this article that came out in 1956 in a journal or a magazine called Women's Home Companion. And it was an article written by Rachel Carson, who's a really famous writer about the environment. And she wrote an article called Help Your Child to Wonder. And she really promoted this idea, like many have and still do, about getting outside and letting the skills of observation and the opportunity to observe and make comparisons, and making that something that students lead themselves and young people lead themselves. And Rachel Carson, in this phase of her life, was looking after her nephew for an extended amount of time, which is in the article here. You can see him. And, a lot of her writing was reflecting on what it was like to be with this young boy, Roger, and see the world as a child does, with excitement and enthusiasm and wonder, and just how important that is to growing up with confidence and growing up in a way that looks at science productively. So this article continues, and I pulled out a couple quotes here that I think are just as true today as they were then in 1950. Exploring nature with your child is largely a matter of becoming receptive to what lies all around you. It is learning again to use your eyes, ears, nostrils, and fingertips, opening up the disused channels of sensory impression. For most of us, knowledge of our world comes largely through sight. Yet we look about with such unseeing eyes that we are partially blind. One way to open your eyes to unnoticed beauty is to ask yourself, what if I had never seen this before? And what if I knew I'd never see it again? And this is particularly poignant here at Upham Woods. You're coming on a field trip, you get off of a bus, maybe you're coming to camp for the first time. And this question, I think, is in the heart of a lot of our visitors, a lot of adults or students or teachers. You come to a place that's this unique, and you really do genuinely think these thoughts. What if I'd never seen this before? What if I never am back here again? What would you do next? You'd take closer observation. You'd make notes. Maybe we'd make some science reports. Maybe take some photographs. And so she goes on to write about how important it is to think about science this way and being outside. She writes, I'm sure there's something much deeper, something lasting and significant. Those who dwell as scientists or laymen among the beauties and mysteries of the earth are never alone or weary of life. Whatever the vexations or concerns of their personal lives, their thoughts can find paths that lead to inner contentment and to renewed excitement in living. Those who contemplate the beauty of the earth find reserves of strength that will endure as long as life lasts. There is symbolic as well as actual beauty in the migration of birds, the ebb and flow of the tides, the folded bud ready for spring. There is something infinitely healing in the repeated refrains of nature and the assurance that dawn comes before night and spring after the winter. And I use this quote also when I teach, but thinking about it now in the context of COVID and how we were shut down for a while and we're returning back to some operations, this rings even more true about the value of being outdoors, the value of being engaged in science as a place of strength and renewal. Thanks for that. A few minutes there to think about history with Upham and how we got where we are. I'll go on here to explain some of the things we're doing these days, but you'll understand how we got there. These are more of those photos from the 60s, and I just love these old images. And I have an email address at the end of this slideshow. If any of you out there hear this talk or listen, and you came to Upham Woods at some point in time, please email me your photos and stories. We're in our 80th anniversary year right now and collecting these things. It's just such a joy and helps more people connect, to classmates or to the era that they came and enjoyed this place. So, and that's what you can see here, the sense of nostalgia. And this is more or less still how kids come to Upham Woods on buses, and then they get out into the woods. Here's another example of that. We of course do team building and do games, and in many of the same ways that were done 40, 50, 60 years ago. Today, we're 320 acres. We can have about 200 people at a time on site. So our ideal high group size would be about 150. We have about 12,000 folks a year that we reach through outreach or on site, and we're open all year. There's a lot of things you can see and appreciate about our story. Here's just a couple pieces of imagery around some of the art that's around our history, and just some of the potential for more art, more connection to each other, to nature, to humanity. You may ask, and this goes back to orienting around, okay, 12,000 people come to Upham Woods. Where are those folks from? That's a pretty natural question I thought I should answer in this slideshow. And this is where they come from. So we have school groups 9 months a year, and they come from about a 2-hour radius. a lot of folks, a lot of groups coming out of Madison, out of Milwaukee, a lot of groups out of the Beloit area. And then, of course, the other urban centers you'd expect, the Green Bay area, Stevens Point, La Crosse, and a lot of folks in between. In the summers, we generally have 4-H groups, counties that come and camp. And these are counties that generally camp with us. Of course, last year we didn't have camp. But in a normal year, we would expect to see most, if not all, of these different counties coming. So that should give you a sense of the geographic diversity that we reach, and the types of things these students and young people do when they're here include swimming and canoeing and archery, but also some of our history programs and our science programs. And I'll spend the next few minutes talking about those science programs. We're always, we're working with grad students and undergrads, researchers, and we're also doing a little bit of science on our own here on site as staff. And we want to do science with groups that come. So we do that with technology, our technology program. And some examples of that I'll go over here. They're in these big buckets, big categories for us. We want to, when someone comes to Upham Woods, we want them to have an interaction with the water. We want them to have some interaction or content or understanding of conservation and natural resources. And we also want to connect them to science and technology, engineering, and math. So it's between these 3 pillars that we try to develop our programming, and would shape an ideal experience when someone arrives here. Part of that is to look at that last piece, STEM, is looking at scientists. That's one of the things that produces the knowledge we have on the land and connects us to the Wisconsin idea and connects us to the university. And so obviously, there's like a archetype of the mad scientist, and there's an archetype as well of a bench scientist, somebody. These are all fair things, but we also see science as something that happens outdoors, particularly here at Upham. And there's a lot of careers that for the student that's really interested in staying outside, or they know that that's really what makes them passionate, they can choose to pursue that scientifically in many regards. And even if they don't as a career or a major, we do want to advance the notion that we can all think scientifically about the world around us, and that's what we really can affect. Someone coming here for 3 or 4 days, that may not put them on a course to being a career scientist, but we believe during their time here, we can model scientific thinking and how we can get knowledge from that process. And that's really what we want to accomplish through many of our programs, including our DOTS program. And DOTS stands for the Digital Observation Technology Skills Program. And you can think about it in 2 buckets. One is hardware and one is software, or nouns and verbs if you want. But the yellow box you see here is kind of the noun part. It's the tools we use to do it. But the method and the approach and the storytelling is really the exciting part. And so you see both of those in balance. Some of these tools make the storytelling richer. The storytelling gives the next person another starting point to go do their next inquiry. And this is another way to fill out that idea, is to look at a Venn diagram of, the value of storytelling and who does it, the value really simply of, what makes a scientific study. And then in the middle of that, this is our area that we focus on, using data and observations that we collect to answer a question, and empowering students to ask that question and then go answer it. And we want to also empower students to be storytellers of that process, to teach others about discovery that they're making, and hopefully be an inspiration in the process. And here's an example, some of these tools, and these images are images students and educators took using our approach and our tools that you get when you come to the site here. But meteorology, we have a lot of ties to climate science education, One of those things directly is around looking at the weather, and these tools help us do that. And relationships between objects and energy. And we have a few different ways that we look at energy transfer as thermal investigators using thermal imagery. And you can really look at urban or rural or agricultural or forest. You can look at any area and look at it more deeply with some of these digital imagery tools and really see some basic science concepts come to life. And that's what we also promote in our outreach. We have microscopes that we distribute, and here you can see they're paired with iPads, so you can collect the microscopic imagery. That's another part of our method. And once you've collected that image, it can become a part of your scientific storytelling. And then you can share your outcome with your peers or parents or the next group that's coming by. And these are all kind of examples of that. And up in the upper left, you can see our template for doing that. We make sure that there's generally some images the students take, a map, a method, a story that summarizes it, and sometimes that's a poem or a narrative or a haiku, or it's in English or Spanish, or it really is up to the student to decide how they want to tell the story, and they can do that with words, numbers, or images. And just to round that out, we have a handful of other ways we collect images around the site that makes it easier to connect to the landscape and ask questions. And so these are direct photos from Upham Woods. You see some raccoons here, and here's a fox with a I think that's a turkey that he somehow has. And again, it's just about igniting that wonder, like Rachel Carson was saying. This is a important photo too. We have these game cameras that capture wildlife out on the island, and I love this photo because generally when you get the memory card out of one of those cameras, you're looking through a lot of squirrels and leaves that kind of move a little bit in front of the lens, and then this young person popped up in one of them, and it's startling because you're looking through 1,000 images, and all of a sudden some kid is playing with you, or playing a joke, and I just love it. It reminds me of the joyfulness of being outdoors and the comfort students have with technology, and how technology is an important way for students of today to see the value of the natural world, or have their inquiry kind of prompted or fed through that process. So I think that's what we're trying to do every day here. We want to be looking at questions like that, whether we're doing our outreach in Milwaukee, which is a photo in the middle, whether it's out in our water education classroom, which you see on the left, or out on the river, taking a bigger trip. All these are different venues where we can incorporate these philosophies. In doing so, we share that beyond the boundaries of Upham Woods, obviously, through publications, through publishing these approaches and research ideas. Here's a handful of those. Importantly, though, some things we focus on are really around environmental education as a way to do STEM education that closes or helps close achievement gaps in schools and communities we work in. And here's a couple of examples of that. Implementing eco-pedagogy as an experiential approach to decolonizing science education. And that's a long way of saying, how can our approaches in environmental education create more inclusive science education? And similarly with the Mind the Gap paper here, there's a big STEM achievement gap in a lot of parts of our state and a lot of parts of our society. And environmental education is, one of the ways we can work as a collaborator with schools and communities to inspire and support the next generation of professionals that come into the field. And as I wrap up here, I want to also reflect on this last year and restate our, our commitment to anti-racist and inclusive and diverse environmental education. And environmental education, has over 1 million opportunities a year in the state of Wisconsin to make a difference for kids. And it can make that difference in STEM education, and it can also make it a difference in the way that we talk about inclusion and race and justice work that is happening whether you're in a city or in a rural environment. Environmental ed is one way to see that as a lens and a place where we can make the world better. And specifically, we're a part of a really large initiative to do that with colleagues from all around the University of Wisconsin-Madison. And through this project, Humanities Education for Anti-Racism Literacy in the Sciences, we'll be, in the next couple of years, supporting an artist in residence program here at Upham Woods, working towards indigenizing our field station operations, and looking at equity in training, and then having more immersive collegiate experiences. So with that, I'm gonna wrap it up. The 80th anniversary, is a time to look back at how our journey and our stories changed, and also kind of take a pause and look at how we are going to craft our journey moving forward. And some of that stuff remains the same, the island, the kids, people passionate about the environment. And we have a lot of important new concepts to add to that too. So with that, if you have any stories from the past or thoughts about that future, drop me an email. I get emails, a couple times a month with photos like the ones you see here, or stories, and I learn something all the time about how Upham Woods used to be and how it can continue to be an important part of communities. And I'm glad to be a part of the UW-Wisconsin community. So thank you very much.
Wow. Yeah, Justin, thank you so much for sharing this important part of our Wisconsin history. Hi, everybody. Fran Paleo-Moyer, Badger Talks producer. Feel free to throw your questions in the chat, or if you want to share any experiences of your history with Upham Woods, we'd love to hear it. So, Justin, the looming question is there in fact a ghost at Upham Woods?
Well, you'll have to read the book to find out.
Yeah.
That's a good question, Fran. Thanks. I've not seen a ghost here. I've read about one in the book, and it's but there are ghost stories about the Dell House, which is at the foot of the island, which was a tavern back in the 1800s, and the site of many exciting histories and people that may have met untimely demises. But it's not a part of our curriculum, though. I'll say every single time we start out with our thermal imagery equipment, probably 9 times out of 10, the first thing students want to do is go find ghosts. So it's a starting point.
Okay, well, that's great for sharing. But in all seriousness, it's wonderful that it's been an inspiration behind many books and topic for many writers. So that's really, really wonderful and fascinating. So curious from the perspective of the university, and a state university at that, are we unique in that we have this resource at the University of Wisconsin, or are there other states that have similar land assets that they utilize?
That's a great question, and it's something I study a lot as we do our planning every year, and every couple of years as a big strategic plan. We look at where our comps are, our peers, and I'd say most states, most land grant institutions have a place like Upham Woods, and depending upon how they got that land, kind of influences what that place looks like and what it does. Some places are more focused on um, agricultural research or silviculture or being a raw field station for just undergraduates. We're kind of we do have some unique traits though. And this is a really special piece of land that we're on. And I think one of the best examples I know of any of our neighboring states. We have this amazing opportunity to reach young people and students. We have this amazing like science history that's happened here with the with NASA research, and we have this fantastic cultural history. And I think that blend is really powerful, and I think it does put us in a pretty unique space. A lot of places do one of those things, but maybe not all of them. So
yeah, it's amazing the work that you've done. And I think just prior to our starting, you had said some staggering number of the people served at Upham Woods.
Yeah, we were looking at, it does come up every now and then. Someone will ask how many people have come to Upham Woods. And it's over 750,000 people have come here over the years, which is just, that's a really substantial number of Wisconsinites, primarily, that came here either as a sixth grader or seventh grader, or maybe as a college student. That's a lot of people across the state that have a touchstone or memory of the place.
So Mary Lou Rush on Facebook is bringing up a good question. Can ordinary citizens come to this area just to hike? You have talked a lot about the research being done there and the camping groups, but can you talk a little bit about just, public access?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. We have community, we accomplish that through community programs, and we have a wide array of those. Bio blitzes, canoe and paddle club, archery clubs, like community open house days. One of the things we have to balance is our access with the privilege of working with young people, and that's kind of a important thing. So think of it like a school grounds, even though it's probably the most beautiful school you'd ever attend. It still comes with a lot of the expectations that it would have like in the middle school or high school in your own community, which is, they kind of want to know who's there and, make sure if there's young people there that, there's a community program that's not interfering with what they're doing. So the short answer is yes, we have a lot of community opportunities and things that you can go to our website and sign up for. But right now we don't have a lot of just, swing on by and, see what's happening type of stuff.
So short answer is kind of take a look at the website and look for those public access days then. So it sounds like you have perhaps one of the funnest jobs on the planet. And for school teachers or whoever is tuning in, or young scientists potentially, can you just quickly talk about your background and how you ended up getting into this field and this job?
Oh my gosh. I have not thought about that for a while. I just love being outside as a kid. And, I'm really lucky to be doing that as a job. And I think that, a place like this, there's only a couple in every state, maybe. So I feel really lucky to have this spot to do some of this work. To get here, I'd say a wide diversity of things prepared me for that. And being in, it'll sound crazy, but working at other camps, but also working as a RA when I was in college, or working in IT as a IT consultant. A lot of these little footnotes around these, it's all these different jobs, and running a camp just requires a little bit of all those little experiences to kind of solve puzzles. You don't know what kind of puzzle you're going to solve in a given day, but there's a wide variety of them that can show up.
Well, just like Brandon had indicated in the introduction, obviously he's a political science major, but a big piece of his life is his work at Upham Woods. Karen Meehan is commenting on Facebook. She says, spectacular experiences in the 60s at a 4-H camp at Upham Woods. I was a camper for several years and a junior counselor as a teenager.
Yeah.
Our Milwaukee County 4-H group even went to a winter camp. So many great memories and friendships. So it's really been the backdrop for many memories for so many people. Carol Voss is asking, do you or your partners seek interns to assist for environmental science students or grads?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And we, more now than ever. But we always have over my shoulder here, there's a couple theses on the shelves of people that finished their masters here and that produce curriculum. Those are all from interns, so that history is here. And right now we have 8 different federal grants we're working on, and all those are opportunities to train or be an intern or have a connection to graduate or undergraduate coursework. So the short answer is yes, and in a wide variety of ways, from anti-racism literacy and some humanities stuff, all the way over to climate science education and monitoring around water quality. So absolutely, we have a lot of. It's a big lab.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, Justin's email is up on the screen. You're welcome to take a peek at it, justin.hupham@wis.edu. You can always email your questions to badgertalks@uwmad.wis.edu as well. Justin, thank you so much for sharing this information with us, and hope to make a trip out there myself one day.
Oh, yeah. We'd love it.
Great. Thanks so much.
Everyone,
please join us again next Tuesday, May 11th. We're going to be talking to esteemed anthropologist John Hawkes. You may have seen him on the Discovery Channel, the History Channel. He's been an on-screen expert, many times. He's going to be talking about new advances in our understanding of human evolution. So a talk not to miss next Tuesday at noon. As always, visit badgertalks.wis.edu where you can sign up for our upcoming schedule of events. You can see our upcoming programs that are coming. Please consider a donation. Badger Talks is supported by a grant from the Alumni Association, so we do appreciate those donations to continue the programming. Or you can sign up to host your own speaker. We have a slate of about 375 faculty and staff that are ready and willing to give talks around the state. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll look forward to seeing you next week.